Okay, Mike McConnell, we come up on debate season sometime soon. Just went through the whole Republican primary nonsense, and one of the things that drives me nuts watching a debate is when the politician simply avoids answering the question. They take off on whatever tangent they choose to take off on, and it's the sort of thing that's happened to me over the years in the course of trying to just interview a politician. My favorite line from a politician is they usually try to butter you up a little bit. You'll ask a direct question. The response will go something like, Mike, that's a great question. But I think even more importantly, and then they just say whatever they want to say, no relation whatsoever to your question. So I have a guest standing by who has an idea that I think needs a push, needs to get people behind it. And that is to have a debate where the politician is forced to answer the question. And there are actually two specific rules. I'll get to my guest and let him explain them. His background is simply that he's an attorney, did some work for his local Democratic Party at one point. And I came across him in the article a couple of days ago from Leonard Pitts in the paper, and he would be Rob Kilmer. Mr. Kilmer, good to have you on the program. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
You've been pushing this for a couple of years, correct?
I have.
And what sort of bites do you get? I mean, you do other radio talk shows. You had a radio show where you did a radio version of this, correct?
Yes, I had the You Defend It radio show for 2 years. And then it was during that show that I developed the idea for the televised debates. And we filmed a pilot in 2009, and I've been pushing it since that time.
The two rules, I'll let you go ahead and lay them out there. Rule number one is?
Each participant must directly answer the question that is asked.
Thank you. Which isn't asking too much. Rule number two?
Each must do so without a single reference to his or her opponent's argument, party, or perceived political philosophy. In other words, each debater must show up with a solution and defend it.
And then on top of that, you'd like to see everything fact-checked in the course of the debate and have the fact checks pop up on screen to let you know whether or not they were honest or not.
Yeah, it would be fact-checked in real time. And let me... that I'm so grateful to Leonard Pitts for the article or the column he wrote.
Yeah.
And I just do want to explain the debate a little bit further if I can.
Sure, do it.
It's my belief that Americans are entitled to meaningful, nationally televised, one-on-one debates every 4 weeks, not every 4 years.
Okay.
These issues do not take leave of us in between presidential elections. And I also believe, and this is the premise for the show, or one of the rationales behind it, that right now the political process is upside down. It involves politicians perpetually trying to bring the public around to their point of view. And they do that with blame and fear and what we ordinarily hear in commercials and on talk shows and in debates. And I believe that is backwards. The American public should be telling Congress and the president what it wants, and the You Defend It debate series will provide the means to get that done.
It seems to me that if you pick it, CNN or any cable or ABC, NBC, CBS, if they let people know up front, these will be the rules of our debate, I think it would draw people to watch it. I mean, I think many people are tired of the level of BS in supposed debates, that it's a major tune-out factor. I would think if PBS, they'd have all-time ratings for their debates if they told people up front, we have these two rules. I see so droves of people tuning in.
And, what a lot of people don't realize is that the presidential debates, for instance, and a You Defend It debate would visually resemble a presidential debate. I think there has to be a dignified setting for this type of debate, but what most people don't realize is that presidential debates, the different candidates and their camps, they negotiate rule upon rule upon rule for these debates. The average number of rules for presidential debate is 72. It's over before it starts as far as getting anything substantive out to the public. And I think that most people are as frustrated as I am with talking points being substituted for actual answers. And I believe that the public is not only receptive to, but is at this point demanding accountability. And when I say that, I mean everybody from the Tea Party to Occupy Wall Street and everybody in between. They want to watch accountable debates. And when you look at the statistics out there, it's fascinating who doesn't watch. Right now, the number one political show on television nightly gets less than 1% of the American public. Less than 1%.
And what show is that?
That's the Bill O'Reilly show, the O'Reilly Factor. And from the network perspective, the 25 to 44 demographic that networks care about, he draws in an average of 730,000 out of 83 million. So 99% of the public does not watch him, and I'm not commenting one way or the other about his show. I am simply saying that 99% of the country doesn't watch the number one show by far in the country.
Well, I think on top of that, if you just look at the news in general, the big three, ABC, NBC, CBS, when you add all their viewers together, it's around 16% of the country that watches what went on today. So that doesn't bode well for an informed electorate either. Would you agree or disagree that, I think generally speaking, our public discourse has become a little bit rough, a little bit raw. But I don't think that the average moderator of a debate drives their points. I understand that you want a formal presidential atmosphere, but when someone doesn't answer a question, they simply move on, or someone will say, well, you didn't really answer my question, and then move on, as opposed to going back and saying, yes, but sir, that doesn't begin to answer my question. No one seems to, if they would just begin to drive that point, it would make.
I agree, and that's why the first rule of our debates is you must directly answer the question, and an answer that begins to stray, and I stress begins to stray, will be stopped. And the important thing for the You Defend It debate series perspective is that the judge stands in, and I use the word judge intentionally, that we don't believe in moderators. We do not believe in having somebody pose questions and then passively watch as talking points are substituted for answers. In that moment, the moderator we have, our judge, will be standing in for the American public. And you will hear things like, stop. That answer is not related to my question, and this is a critical issue to the American public. They're trusting me to get an answer for them tonight, and I'm going to. So start over. Here's the question. Go. Now, that's what people are going to hear.
Have you gotten any response from any cable network, anybody?
I have. I've met with CNN. I've met with ABC. The problem with ABC was a lack of a cable presence, a real cable presence, because then you're really fighting for minutes within ABC News division, and you're not going to get them.
Right.
CNN, they have my project. They've had it for some time. I have not heard back from them. But, CNN's ratings are the worst they've been in 21 years, and they really shouldn't be, because CNN consistently polls as the most objective, but they are the least watched among the political channels, and that's because they do not make the objective into the compelling. And the You Defend It debate series would do that. There's no doubt when you look at the number of people who watch presidential debates, 60 to 70 million people. Independents and most Republicans and Democrats, the people who are not watching what would be described as the far left or the far right political shows, they care just as much about their country as anybody else. They love their country. They are worried about where it's heading. They just don't feel that there's anything out there right now addressing their issues and appealing to them as people who want answers, not watching people fight.
How big of a story would it be up front? Let's say if CNN embraced your concept, put the word out to the RNC and DNC that these are going to be the rules of the debate, and then both declined. I think CNN would look like a hero for trying.
They would, and right now there's a process in place. There's a hierarchy, and this would give people who might ordinarily not get an opportunity to speak to the nation an opportunity to speak to the nation. You don't have to be the most notorious or publicly recognized senator in either party to have a solution. If you are a big city mayor, for instance, who has solved major problems, you've dealt with unfunded mandates from the state and federal government, you've creatively solved problems, you're going to get your shot. And there's a lot of people who are dying, I believe, to have a forum like this. And as an example, I will tell you that the pilot we filmed, the topic was the proper role of a Supreme Court justice. And the people who participated in that were people who you will see and hear on radio and television all the time. But they wanted an opportunity to showcase this type of forum. We had Kurt Levy, who is the executive director of something called the Committee for Justice. And essentially, he is the person who you are likely to read about on behalf of the Republican Party, who attempts to derail Obama's appointees to the federal bench,
right,
from the district court to the Supreme Court. And we had Kermit Roosevelt III, who is a law professor at University of Pennsylvania and wrote a book called The Myth of Judicial Activism. I mean, you could not have two more polar opposites. And they've each been quoted extensively. And I've heard them on the radio, and I've read their quotes. They were eager to come and do this. And to give you an idea of how eager, in particular, Kurt Levy was, he came on a Sunday in July of 2009. We flew him up for the pilot, flew him back to Washington, and the hearings for Justice Sotomayor started the next day. He was a busy man.
Yeah.
But he believed in this, as do we.
I got a few more questions, so let me get a quick break in here, and I'll get to them. Your website, for those who'd love to jump on board and push this, is youdefendit.com, correct?
Yes, it is.
Great. Sit tight. Rob Kilmer, right back, 720 WGN. Mike McConnell, my new friend here, Rob Kilmer, whose idea behind youdefendit.com is to have a series of presidential debates where the two contestants, will say, have to answer questions directly, cannot make references to party ideology or their opponent's party ideology, simply answer the question. And I think it would be a hit if people knew that politicians would have to answer the question. And quick question here raised by a caller who couldn't hang on, and that is, do you think that moderators today don't get tough because they fear the ramifications? You're tough on Obama or Romney, and later on, one of them, of course, wins the election, and your network is shut out. Do you think that's part of why they might tiptoe?
I assume it is, but I want to clarify. This isn't about presidential debates. This is about debates all year long, every year.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, when you mentioned that, who's the opponent?
It depends on the issue. These are issue-oriented debates. I mean, right now, if we were going to have a debate about the debt, which we desperately need, we desperately needed a debate on health care. We spent 9 months talking about the politics of health care, and then it passed, or Obamacare, and then another 2 years arguing about it after that. And if you asked 100 people on the street exactly what's in Obamacare, they wouldn't know, because Americans were not presented with a nationally televised debate that showcased the facts of Obamacare.
Well, even there, at 2,300 pages, you wouldn't have gotten it all into the debate anyway.
That is true. But you'd have gotten more than I think people understand now about what's in it. But that's not popular yet. And as far as recriminations against any network, I do think that's true in the presidential debate context. But as far as having debates monthly, I think the way the whole premise of the show is to draw in massive public participation, and I want to talk about that for just a second if I can. You have to really think American Idol with this. I mean, this is not about having debates that people just watch. One of my biggest complaints or concerns is that I think democracy has become a spectator sport, and people don't feel like they have an opportunity to participate.
Right.
The You Defend It debates involve immediate and massive public participation. People vote via phone and internet during the debate. One question: which debater is doing a better job of persuading you by defending his or her position? In between debates, the public votes or submits suggestions for topics, suggestions for debaters. I think we need to find a way, and I think this series does that, to build democracy from the ground up. I don't think Americans should be stuck with the limited pool of ideas that Congress chooses from when it votes on things. I think the ideas should come from Americans, from the public. If a big city mayor, and I know I've mentioned that before, but I think they're an untapped resource in the national conversation.
I would agree. I would say the one problem you would face with this is if a particular issue has a representative on the debate who just does a dismal job presenting his issue. So the entire thing, let's say something as big as Obamacare, goes down in flames. They're never going to want to go near that show again.
And there's lots of people next in line. You know, this debate, this idea contemplates that. But there's, you know, ideally you're going to get people who are recognized in the mind of the public as being associated with a certain issue.
Right.
Like if we were doing the national debt, we'd ask Paul Ryan to come on. And if he said no, people would know that.
Right.
But, you know, whoever has been out there or whoever wishes to advocate on behalf of a particular perspective will be given an opportunity to do it. But I think it's important for the American public. I mean, if we were discussing the debt and how to...
Well, I understand. I'm up against the clock, as you would understand, so I do have to run. But
sure.
The point is, people, there is a version of the show online if you go to youdefendit.com, and then people can get behind your idea and push as best they can.
From our pilot.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, well, listen, I hope you keep fighting the good fight. Best of luck. We'll see what happens. Rob Kilmer, thanks for your time and all your energy and all that, and we'll see what happens when you succeed. We'll talk again.
Thanks very much.
All right, thanks. Have a good day.